That is a fundamental role religion has played. Religion of all stripes. You go back to ancient Greece, we call it mythology, but it's really their religion, all right? You know, Zeus and Neptune, not Neptune, Poseidon. And so there's a storm. I don't know anything about storms. I don't know anything about the Coriolis force or the ocean atmosphere connection or moisture and relative humidity. I don't know anything about any of that yet. Poseidon is angry. A lightning bolt hit. Zeus is angry. Those are my explanations, and I'm done. Now I don't have to live in some kind of profound state of ignorance about the world around me and its effect on my life. After death, I have no idea. Am I actually rotting in the ground? No, you are in some other place. You're on Valhalla or heaven or whatever the religion provides for that belief system. You cannot become a scientist if you require that every question has an answer. Because it's the very questions that have no answers that attract you to the laboratory every single day. So there's got to be some kind of a shift. Part of it is you never really grew up from childhood because you're always asking questions. But you've successfully made the transition to say, here's a question, not only did my parents not know, nobody doesn't know. And I will then set up an entire lab just to find that answer. And when you do find that answer, that is one of the greatest moments that can happen in a scientist's life. Sextillion, a 1 with 21 zeros. Of what possible significance can this number have? That is the estimated number of stars in the universe. Stars in the universe. Some people, this depresses them. Among them, this gentleman, a professor of psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. We opened a space show 11 years ago that was a zoom out from Earth. And Earth shrunk down, and the solar system shrunk down, and it just became one of the stars in the background field. Then our whole galaxy shrunk down, and it was just one of countless other galaxies in the universe. He saw that space show. I am assistant professor of social cultural psychology, University of Pennsylvania. I want to conduct a research project in collaboration with the planetarium. My research focuses on the psychological experiences associated with feelings of insignificance. I'm thinking, damn, bummer of a job. What? What's he like when he comes home? Honey, I'm home. How was work today? Miserable. You know, how does that work? How do you even do this? I recently saw the space show at the planetarium, and needless to say, it was the most dramatic elicitor of feelings of smallness and insignificance that I have yet encountered. I submit to you that if you go in feeling large and come out feeling small, it meant you went in with an ego unjustifiably high to begin with. The problem is not in the universe. The problem is within you. That's what I submit. There are people who are certain that these are places science will never reach. In fact, they almost boast. They'll say science will never explain love or never explain why we like a work of art. And so I ask them, do you say we'll never do it because you don't want us to ever do it? Or because you don't think it's possible? Because I can imagine tests for what love is, for whether or not you'll like a painting. It's not too hard to imagine. If these tests come out in this way, I think it tells us, it will tell us, that all emotion is simply what gets stimulated in your brain and what does not. All belief systems that are not evidence-based would be triggered by simply what gets triggered in your brain and what does not. That is all, I think, in the future of neuroscience. And if it doesn't reveal itself that way, that's interesting too. If the two of us love a painting or sculpture or work of music, and different parts of our brains are being stimulated, that's interesting. that tells us it's more intractable than we ever imagined. I'd want to know that as well. But all those answers are going to come from neuroscience. Education, I think, at its best, is not telling you you're wrong or even telling you you're right. It's teaching you how to be curious so that you know how to find an answer. And so if I tell you that if you rub these crystals together, it'll heal you, and you say, oh, wow, that's great, give me them, I'll buy them. You say, well, that's stupid, right? Or if you say, that's ridiculous, get out of here, you know, that is equally as intellectually lazy as it is to accept them. What takes more work is questioning it. Where they come from? What are they made of? What's their chemical composition? Where did you find them? What tests showed that what you're... By the time you ask, the person's gone. They're not going to sell it to you because you asked questions. So the point is, there are people who are being handed their opinions. They're being handed their points of views by people who they do not know how to question. And those are not the seeds of an informed democracy. In fact, that's the beginning of the unraveling of an informed democracy. And the moment somebody's opinion is handed to everybody, that we know what kind of governments those are, and those are not free societies. Those are free societies where your thought is controlled by people. If your belief system derives from what's called inspired truths that do not come out of empirical investigation of the physical world, it has no place in the science classroom. That doesn't mean it has no place anywhere else. Put it in the religious philosophy class. Put it in the history of human thought class. But it just has no place in the science classroom.
Do you give people who make this case that that was the beginning and that there had to be something that provoked the beginning, do you give them an A at least for trying to reconcile faith and reason?
I don't think they're reconcilable.
What do you mean?
Well, so let me say that differently. All efforts that have been invested by brilliant people of the past have failed at that exercise. They just fail. And so the track record is so poor that going forward I have essentially zero confidence, near zero confidence that there will be fruitful things to emerge from the effort to reconcile them. So, for example, if you knew nothing about science and you read, say, the Bible, the Old Testament, which in Genesis is an account of nature. That's what that is. And I said to you, give me your description of the natural world based only on this. You would say the world was created in 6 days and that stars are just little points of light, much lesser than the sun. And in fact, they can fall out of the sky, right? Because that's what happens during the Revelation. One of the signs that the second coming is that the stars will fall out of the sky and land on Earth. So to even write that means you don't know what those things are. You have no concept of what the actual universe is. So everybody who tried to make proclamations about the physical universe based on Bible passages got the wrong answer. So what happened was, when science discovers things and you want to stay religious, or you want to continue to believe that the Bible is unerring, what you would do is, you would say, well, let me go back to the Bible and reinterpret it. Then you'd say things like, oh, they didn't really mean that literally, they meant that figuratively. So this whole sort of reinterpretation of how figurative the poetic passages of the Bible are came after science showed that this is not how things unfolded. And so the educated religious people are perfectly fine with that. It's the fundamentalists who want to say that the Bible is the literal truth of God and want to see the Bible as a science textbook, who are knocking on the science doors of the schools trying to put that content in the science. Enlightened religious people are not behaving that way. They're saying, yes, science is cool, we're good with that, and use the Bible to get your spiritual enlightenment and your emotional fulfillment.
Quran does not agree with the theory of Charles Darwin because Charles Darwin is the theory. Quran is a book of fact, not a book of theory.
while Europe was disemboweling heretics in Baghdad over that period, were the crossroads. There were Jews, Muslims, Christians, doubters. They weren't, the word atheist didn't exist back then. They were all sharing ideas. Great advances were made in engineering, astronomy, mathematics. These three words are Arabic words: algebra, algorithm. Our numerals are called Arabic numerals. Those are the numerals we use. All traceable to that period because they basically invented algebra there. Okay? That went on until the 12th century. You read history books, they say, oh, the Mongols sacked the libraries in Baghdad, and there'll be explanations. What they tend to leave out was another force at work, and that was the efforts of this man, Al-Ghazali, who was a Muslim cleric, who was to Islam what St. Augustine was to Christianity. What he did was he took all these ways people were practicing Islam, put them together, codified it, said, this is what you need to do to be a good Muslim. Okay, just as what Augustine did, which included how to exactly burn the witches, that kind of thing. So it was all in there. It was all in there. And in there was the statement that manipulating numbers was the work of the devil. And that cut out the kneecaps of the entire mathematical enterprise of that period, because he gained cultural power and political power with his philosophies. And you know something? Islam has not recovered from that since. It's tragic. How many Muslims in the world? There's 1.3 billion. Let's do some analysis. The Nobel Prize, 1900 to 2007. Okay? Let's take a look at how many Nobel Prizes were won by the Jews. How many Jews are in the world? 15 million tops? Let's take a look. Doing it for the sciences, of course. Biomedical, chemistry, physics, economics. 25%, 1/4 of all Nobel Prizes in the sciences have gone to Jews. Let's look at practicing Muslims. Are you ready? Here we go. 0, 0, 1, 1. And in fact, the one in physics was a Pakistani Muslim, not a Middle Eastern Muslim. And if you count economics as a science, it's like 1, 1.5, 2. 0.3% of the total. You want to look at the relative impact? Relative impact, here it goes. The Jews have won 80 times more Nobel Prizes than the Muslims, and they are 1/80th of that population. That would be 6,400 times the impact. I lament, I celebrate the Jews, but I lament what might have been discovered had 1.3 billion Muslims had the cultural drive to discover as what happened 1,000 years ago. If that had been the case, they'd have every Nobel Prize. If that tradition had continued, but it is gone. It's not.